lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And it's Gill.
And today on the show, we're going to be reviewing Saw 10? Saw X? Socks? Whatever you want to call it.
Definitely
it was
Socks.
released September 29th, 2023, exclusively in theaters. Now, Jill, considering you're not a regular on this show, how about you tell us if you'd consider yourself a fan of the Saw franchise, and based on that, were you looking forward to Saw X?
Are you ready for my life story right now?
Oh, no. Okay, never mind. Rowan, how about... No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I haven't seen every Saw film because there's so many, and, I kind of fell off the horror movie bandwagon for a couple years, as you guys know. But I remember the original Saw and, the first maybe, 4 Saw movies having a pretty big impact on me as a little adolescent. I watched the first one at a Boys and Girls Club Wake-a-thon.
Ooh, okay.
Looking back on that, I'm like, what the hell? But also, that's really cool. So, I don't know. It just gives me this warm feeling inside. And actually, over the weekend, I watched the first 3 Saw movies. Just had a marathon of Saw movies. It brought back some good memories. I always liked the first movie, and the second movie I really, really liked as well. And after that, after the 4th one, I fell off. But yeah, I was excited for this movie. What about you, Rowan?
I can't say I was excited. I stopped going to these in the theater at 3. I remember the hype when the first one came out, and we've said on the show before, I think even Mike, we're all big fans of the second one. I know me and Mike and Exilia were, but I mean, this has never really been a high point franchise for me. I kind of gave up seeing any of the rest. I just watched compilations on YouTube of all the kills. But when I saw this, I was like, hey, I haven't seen a Saw movie in 15 years in the theater. And why wouldn't I go back to see Saw X in brackets, formerly Twitter? So... Why the hell not? What about you, Colton?
Fan, I think, is a bit of a strong word. I've seen the first one a good few times, especially growing up. It was one of those natural ones you'd throw on to gross people out at sleepover parties or, that sort of thing. And then I've also seen number 2 and 3 a good times, as well. The second one I have a really strong memory of doing that childish thing where you sit down, you watch with a group of people and you're like, oh, I'm that person, and she's that person, and then basically you watch the movie, and then just people die off as you go along, and you just see kind of who, quote-unquote, survives the movie.
That's not a universal experience.
I was going to say, maybe we're just weird. We used to do that every now and then. It was kind of like you'd poke fun at your friends. It's oh, who's the small, dorky kid, and then you'd point him out as the small, dorky kid.
And it was
in the
Colton.
Movie. No, I was not the small, dorky kid.
Sure.
But I don't know. I've seen them all. I just quickly Googled the franchise, and I think I watched them all in theaters up to Saw the Last Chapter. So I did not see Jigsaw or Spiral in theaters, but I saw all the rest of them in theaters. So they're just kind of a guilty pleasure. I think at a certain point I just kind of accepted that they were garbage, and I didn't really care about following the thread. It was literally just following, oh, what weird traps are they going to do this time? And then also kind of be disappointed by a bunch of them as well. I just do think these movies get pretty bad after a certain point. So
yeah.
I'm always kind of surprised with, how deep the Saw fandom goes. We'll get into it when we're, discussing this movie. But my audience clapped during this movie. So I was like, okay, I'm not quite there with you guys. But yeah, what I will say is I wasn't really looking forward to this. I didn't really care about it. But then the reviews came out, and I'm just such a sucker for, critical reception and oh my God, this is well received. And I saw that this was the most well received one in the franchise. And then I also saw that fans were really liking it. So I was like, all right, I can't wait to check this out now. So, is Saw X better than Fast X? Well, before we get into that, let's throw it on over to the trailer.
Or in the words of the guy in my theater when the theme song started playing and just screamed, "Let's fucking go."
What the hell is going on in Canada?
Hello, everyone. day. It's time to play a game. Saw X is the biggest horror surprise of the year. It will scare the out of you. Trust me. Riveting from start to finish. It's the best Saw since the original.
Anyone else?
Saw X, rated R, now playing only in theaters.
What you just heard is from Saw X, directed by Kevin Grutert. Grutert? I don't know how you say that name.
McGruber.
It's written by Pete Goldfinger and Josh Stolberg. And the story is as follows. Hoping for a cure, John Kramer travels to Mexico to undergo a risky experimental medical procedure, only to discover that the entire operation is a scam to defraud the most vulnerable. Armed with a newfound purpose, the infamous serial killer uses deranged and ingenious traps to turn the tables on these con artists. Now, here on Now Slang, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. So, Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Saw X?
You know, it definitely did its Saw thing to me. I thought it was kind of interesting because, you know, you do this spoiler-free section, you don't want anyone to know anything, but I feel like if you saw a trailer, like almost this entire movie was just spoiled for you. Like any kind of big reveal was in the trailer, which was kind of crazy. So, I guess that's just modern movie making. But, I mean, you know, Saw be sawing. There was some callbacks for the franchise. You know, there was a lot of interest. I don't know, are they interesting at this point? I feel like a lot of the traps is just like, they're just like this rinse and repeat of the same thing over and over again. Like, there's only so many body parts you can, like, cut off or, like, deform or anything. So, it's just, like, different ways we can do it.
Has, like, a dick got cut off in the Saw franchise yet?
No, not yet.
No?
I don't think.
Okay, well,
that's
Saw
for the...
Don't say it.
That's for
Don't
the Tooth Fairy crossover. Saw Tooth Fairy crossover.
Oh, sorry, all right. Just cut that out, Rowan.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil that crossover. But you know, I thought this was interesting for one real reason. I'm not sure your guys' theater going experience, but I can't really think of a horror franchise that has done the mid-credit scene before. I think this is the first time.
I'd say like those Halloween movies or something did it, right? Like the new
Conjuring.
ones?
Conjuring doesn't count. I meant
Conjuring probably did them as well. I just think you're wrong, Rowan.
Really? I'm not saying for the credits. So I just thought it was interesting that there was like this mid-credit scene like it was a goddamn comic book movie.
Didn't like X also have a big reveal? Like didn't they show the trailer for Pearl or something during X?
I think so.
I think I left.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're just leaving. You're just literally like,
stay.
Yo, I got to get home and record this Now Slaying.
Yeah,
I can't
that's
waste
right.
another minute.
Colton's gonna yell at me if I'm late.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought it was interesting. I thought there was a little more like beef to this than most of them. Like a story. There's not really a story in any of them. I know, Colton, you say, like, have you seen Jigsaw and?
Yes. I've seen literally all of them. I don't know if I'd say this one has more beef, but you know,
well, I mean,
it has more substance.
This is like way more of a story than I think any of the other ones other than the first one had. I mean, we were really getting to the point in this franchise that it was just like, can we fit like 15 traps in an hour and a half movie?
Oh, yeah.
With like zero, it was just the same story. It's like cop, like trying to solve a mystery. So I did appreciate they tried to do something different in this. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, I appreciated that as well. I was actually surprised with how much downtime there was in this movie. Like, outside of like a couple of little key details, pretty much the first half hour of this movie is just a man desperate to find a cure for his cancer and kind of coming to terms with the fact that he doesn't have long left to live. And it was funny when I was watching it, I was just like, how much of the audience is vibing with this? Because, like, once again, if you just remove a couple of key details, I was like, this is just like a stuffy drama. Like, there's not too much to this yet, which, you know, I kind of enjoyed because it got you to kind of really slow down, you know, learn more about John as a character and basically just be like, oh, okay, this guy isn't just like a crazy killer. I was also kind of surprised with how funny the movie was at times. There's some once again, during that first half hour, there's lots of good stuff just with like John cleverly answering questions about his line of work or his outlook on life. Or even like there's some moments of like his post-op like tranquility that like just made my audience chuckle. I also really liked some of the old tech at work, like when he was like Googling stuff, you know, that was pretty fun. Just seeing like that old 2000s like operating system and whatnot. I enjoyed that as well. What I will say is that, speaking vaguely, I do think a lot of the traps were pretty tame, other than one that wasn't tame, and it made me gag a little bit, or almost made me gag. And I could tell that during that specific trap that my audience was squirming. Like, they were really uncomfortable, I could tell. So I was like, all right, this is what we're all here for. And it was like towards the first couple of traps in the movie. So I was like, oh, this is going to be gnarly. But after that, there's nothing really. I didn't think that was too crazy. I will say that specific trap, which we'll definitely get into in the spoiler discussion, I think it kind of betrays the Saw conceit, which is something like as the movies go on, they just like stop caring about, oh, can you survive these traps? And this one, I kind of feel like if you quote unquote did it correctly, so, you know, so you accomplished the task, I think you would probably wind up dying anyways. But once again, maybe you guys can figure out a way to do this without dying in the spoiler filled discussion. But probably my biggest issue overall is just I really didn't like Amanda. I think that might be a hot take, but I think she was terrible. Like, I just like, I don't know when was the last time she acted. Maybe it was Saw 7 or something, but like she was just awful. I was literally like, I know everyone just wants to see her in this, but I wish she wasn't. I would have preferred if it was just John and Carlos or something. I don't know, bringing the little kid or something stupid. I would have preferred that movie. So yeah, that's the gist of my thoughts. What about you, Jill? You've been shaking your head and kind of chuckling along. So what do you think of it?
Oh man. Well, first of all, I can't believe they cut off someone's dick like that. Terrible. Just kidding.
Well, what was crazy is that they cut it like down the middle, like lengthwise.
Like a wiener.
And thankfully he had a lot to work with, so he had time to kind of get out of the trap. But yeah, it was remarkable.
Anyway, my theater was pretty empty. It was like me and my group of friends and like 6 other people. So I don't know what's going on down here. But anyway, it was pretty gnarly. I think from start to finish, maybe more so in the first and middle parts. But they really got meaner, and they're really like they're showing you everything for a long time. Like in the earlier movies, they kind of like have this like flashing sequence so you can see it in like snaps and stuff of what's happening. It doesn't last very long. This one, it's like really in your face. You see everything. You see it for a long time. They are super gnarly. I was freaking out. My friend next to me, she was like rocking back and forth and like shaking. She was freaking out, man. And the people in front of me were also freaking out. People were like covering their eyes and stuff. Like everyone is super uncomfortable. So I thought that was cool. Like it wasn't too much, but it was enough to be pretty extreme.
What do you think of it, Rowan? Just because, you know, I found it kind of tame at times, other than one key thing.
Yeah, I definitely winced a couple times, which surprised me. Right. But I kind of agree with Jill, where like I did think it was kind of weird because I think it was really front loaded, and I think like as it went on, the traps kind of just got tamer and tamer.
Yeah, but still cool.
Yeah, they were still neat. I did actually notice that they did still use that Saw editing where they kind of like speed it up and kind of splice it, and like people are just shaking and herky jerky. But you are right that they actually still did show a little bit more of the gore. It was just, I don't know. This is a weird one where Rowan was wincing a little bit. Like again, you know, there was one key moment, but outside of that, I was just kind of like, I was just
You're just
chilling.
a sick puppy, Colton.
I guess so.
Puppy.
Yeah, that's usually not my role. That's Rowan's, but yeah.
I had like a big question while watching this that I really was thinking about, because I think this is kind of the first Saw that, you know, they kind of deal with the morals of Jigsaw, but like the Saw franchise. And I don't know if you guys have ever really thought about it. Every time I watch Saw, I compare it to the Punisher in comic books, where like it's really kind of like co-opted by like this like conservative right-wing like state of mind where it's like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's like free will, like, and I thought it was interesting that this was like the first one that like kind of tries to like talk to itself about that. You know, there's like conversations about like what is free will? Is there things that like should be considered that like can affect people?
When was the last time you watched a Saw movie?
Oh, a while. I don't know.
Because I
Last time
feel like
watched
they
Saw.
all have that. I feel like they all have that conversation, and he explains like, "I'm not a murderer. They make their own choice. Pound of flesh will set you free," type of shit. Like I feel like that's in all of them.
Yeah, and I do agree, but I feel like this was the first one that I felt it was going against that. Where I find the other ones, like I remember watching like the first and the second, so I watched those like not too long ago. It kind of like reveled in this like, oh, like saving yourself and, atoning for your sins, where I felt this one was really like, well, are you responsible for your sins though? Like there's outside sociological causes to this. And I just thought it was interesting because...
Oh, you're talking about the people in the trap deserve to be in the trap? Is that what you're saying? Like,
I guess I could just talk about it because it's not really spoiled because no one gives a fuck about the talking in this movie. But, like, Amanda brings up, the conversation about, like, being addicted to drugs and... how does that play in your free will and all that kind of stuff? Like, and she does question, like, people are the way they're raised, like their surroundings, that kind of thing, like can affect, your decision making and what you have to do to make a living and all this kind of stuff. I just thought it was interesting.
I just remember literally in Saw 2, he was like, "Oh, you're the addict. We're gonna throw you into a pit full of needles," and then they discuss literally about like drug use. So I don't know. Maybe it's the first time you see the creator of the traps commenting on it and then kind of rationalize how people would make those sorts of decisions. Maybe, but I feel like kind of like the moral element of all these traps was something that I just felt like it's like always been in the Saw franchise. I felt like it was very like they bludgeon you with it, but like that's why I'm saying maybe if it's been a while since you've seen them, maybe just don't remember that. But
well, yeah, and it's not just like I said, it's not about the moral thing, but I always felt the movies leaned into we agree with this like moral choice. Like the movies never shied away from being like it has become over these movies this like anti-hero almost, like the way he is propped up in popular culture and like I said, like I just see that co-opted because in the comic book community, like this is what happened with the Punisher, and then you had every cop on the face of the planet like wearing Punisher t-shirts and like, oh yeah, we agree with him. So I just think the politics of Saw in entirety was kind of interesting in this.
Gotcha. Gill, we cut you off. You were just literally talking about gore. Now we're into the politics of Saw. So what else did you think about the movie?
So apart from that, I liked the backstory. We're learning about John Kramer as a person and kind of his character arc, his villain origin story, which is interesting, while he's also like desperately trying to find a cure for cancer, and then the other subplot that comes from that. I won't talk about it because spoilers. But yeah, that was nice to have in between all of the gore. You said you didn't like Amanda. I didn't either, and I loved her in like the first movie. Like, she's so fucking iconic with that bear trap, and like, I love it. She becomes really annoying because you're like, man, what in the Stockholm Syndrome is like wrong with this girl? Like, she is crying because this old ass man with cancer who should have died a long time ago, theoretically, she's gonna cry over him.
He can't be dead. This is a direct sequel to Saw 1, Jill. Come on.
He's alive
for like another 4 movies or something.
I know, but like, I don't know. I didn't really buy it. Like you said, the acting wasn't great, and I just don't like really understand why she's like doing all this for him. Like, I get it. He got her to appreciate life and all this shit, but she's like doing so much dirty work. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't quite compute in my head.
This is kind of the issue with like prequels in general, though. Like, because like we know Amanda takes over at some point. Like, she's in other sequels that have already come. So like her whole debate of should I, shouldn't I, like has no weight because we know the result of it.
Right, that's true.
I think it was trying to flesh her out and just show a little bit more complexity to her character. There's like, oh, she wasn't just evil or just like wanting the power trip and take over. It was like there was a little bit of deliberation in her head, and will she, won't she? But yeah,
should have been more deliberation on what was on her head. because that wig was not.
I was just going to say,
The
we talked
spirit
about
a
her
dead
hair.
raccoon or something, wasn't it?
The spirit
the
of Mike
fuck?
was with me, and I was like, that wig, that wig.
Add that to the wig list. But oh my god, she looked like she was straight like out of fucking Star Trek with that haircut and the eyebrows. And one of my major gripes with the Saw franchise is like the first several movies have the worst hair and makeup team ever. Like the pale makeup where it doesn't have like matching neck or ear makeup. And like it drives me nuts. And it's like so evident in a lot of the Saw movies. So it just really irks me that this wig. Also, she has definitely aged a lot and probably got some like plastic surgery work done. And she just doesn't look as young as she should be. But I know they can't really do much about that. But yeah, it took me out of it.
I agree. I'm a misogynist pig. I thought the same thing. I was like, oh no, Amanda didn't age very well.
No!
This is tough. Yeah, it was very much, it seemed like that kind of California style, like almost like overly plastic surgery-y.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, it was just, obviously I understand there's a pressure from actresses to kind of do that in Hollywood. It was just a little bit disappointing to see just because I do have a certain image of Amanda in my head as well as being iconic, I think would be a strong word. But I mean, she's definitely a staple of the franchise. I do remember her from the franchise, unlike some other people in the franchise. So she's definitely at least a staple of it. So yeah, seeing her in this, I was a little bit disappointed by. Well, her acting, her portrayal, but then it just also the way she looked didn't look even remotely really close to what I remembered her looking like. So,
and that was bad for me because I was quite inebriated while watching this movie, and spoilers, no spoilers, but because of that, I wasn't sure what the time frame of this movie was. And because of the old ass internet search and how old she was, I was so conflicted. I was like, are we in the past? Are we in the future? Because she looks really fucking old.
We're in the It Follows timeline where some of it's future, some of it's past.
But God, yeah, it was really confusing.
So, we never said, would you recommend it? Gill, Rowan, you guys recommend this?
I do. Like you said earlier, it's gotten a lot of good feedback, and I think that it's the best one since Saw 2. I really like 2, and I really like 1. And I think, Socks is worth going to see in a theater. It's, it'll make you squirm, or it'll make you nostalgic of, the early 2000s.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I also recommend it. I had a pretty good time. Like I said, I winced at some stuff, which never happens in any movie we ever do in the theater. So that was like kind of a cool feeling. I guess I felt dead inside or something. So I finally felt alive. But I had a good time. Like I said, this is a franchise I'm just really not connected to. I think like most of these kind of things, like once you know the gag or the surprise of them, like they kind of lose their luster. But I had a good time with this in the theater. And as like I said, as someone that doesn't really care, that's pretty much all you can ask for. And I think everything we talked about, just like, I think, it's beefier. That's all I'll say until the spoiler. But yeah, I'll recommend it. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, I think this one got the beef. I'd recommend it as well, yeah. I'll save most of what I got to say until the spoiler discussion. But yeah, I enjoyed it. My audience was packed, which is crazy.
Nice.
A lot of people. And like I said, there was like cheering, there was applauding. There was like screaming at the screen at points. It was a very excitative audience. So yeah, it was just a fun time at the movie theaters, and I did like how it was slowed down a little bit more and actually felt like a movie, which sounds like a funny thing to say, but it's kind of like, as Rowan said, at a certain point, these movies just literally devolve into like trap after trap after trap with just shitloads of CGI and nonsense, and it's just awful. So thankfully that didn't veer in that direction. So yeah, that's all three of us recommend it, which is pretty great. And with that, I think it's time to cut to the spoiler discussion for Socks. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Saw X, so if you've not seen Saw X, it's now time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Gill, how about you kick things off with our spoiler-filled discussion?
I have a weird thing about eyeballs Anything to do with eyeballs just like really skeeves me out. And when I tell you, when they started off this movie with the eyeball tubes and then sucking that eyeball through that long ass tube like a meatball, it was so nasty. I could have thrown up. It was pretty fucking gross and graphic, and it went on for a long time. So yeah.
I thought that was a shitty one.
What?
Yeah, so did I. The opening, literally, my spoiler-filled discussion thoughts. The first note is opening trap. The eyeball trap was pretty weak.
What do you?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Especially so, since it was only a dream sequence. Which, once again, it's like kind of whatever. Who cares? We still got to see what happened. But also, just because I don't understand why the guy wouldn't just crank the knob to 5 right away.
Right away. I was like, what are you doing?
Like ripping off a Band-Aid. What's worse, having your hand broken, which once again can be fixed, or having both your eyeballs sucked out and bleeding to death? Like, I don't know.
He wasn't the brightest.
Clearly not. Jeez. Wait. Shouldn't he have been bright? He's like a doctor or something.
No, he's a custodian.
Oh, is he?
Not that custodians can't be smart, but he's not a doctor. Yeah, he was a custodian because the best part about that whole trap was Jigsaw giving a monologue about why custodians are important because they clean and sanitize the hospital.
You're right. My bad. Okay. Yeah, maybe he could have been stunned then. I don't know.
And I'm like, this guy's making a janitor's wage, and fucking Jigsaw just fucking
bro's trying to make a living.
Him.
Yeah,
here's our socio-economical.
Yeah, this is what Rowan was saying.
Portion.
It was crazy when Jigsaw was talking about basic income, and literally who he voted for and all that stuff. That was a wild part of the movie for sure.
But yeah, I thought it was like super tame, like especially for the ones we get later on. I was like, if they had started with one of these,
no man, eyeballs are gross.
I just I don't know. It just seemed
you guys are depraved.
We didn't see anything. Like you literally
what?
You get
you see the eyeball.
You see the eyeballs going in the tube,
that
but
was just
we
a bit
don't
of beef.
We don't see them sucked out of the socket.
You don't see the sockets or anything, yeah,
I'm
or
okay with that.
the little nerves or something like that,
That is fucking disgusting.
That's what I'm saying. It could have been harder though. Like, I don't know. It was just quick. It just, it was like sucking some boba through a straw or something. I don't know.
We got to make sure you skip every Italian horror movie we ever review because you are not in for a good time if you don't like your eyes being destroyed.
Yeah.
I thought I was in, a majority.
I think we should
there.
just discuss all of the traps in order anyways. Like,
yeah.
That's pretty much like what is the spoilering.
I hope you have the order because I don't remember
right?
the order. So
well, it was this one, and then the next one was, I think it was Diego, I think was maybe his name. It was the one where he puts needles on his hands.
Oh yeah.
And he has to perform a biopsy on himself, which
that's fucked.
Which I think that the fact that a lot of the traps in this movie were themed around kind of like cancer treatments and like options, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it really had a whole lot to say, but obviously it was something I noticed. It's like, okay, that's pretty neat.
That was on his commentary though, on getting the cancer out of people.
Oh, I didn't say I was super smart for figuring it out, What do we think of this one? The biopsy one.
I thought it was okay. I thought it was mid.
Fucked. I hate seeing brain tissue. Hate seeing
There's no brain tissue.
No, that's a later one, Jill.
Oh,
I'm talking about the
shit.
one where he just cuts the forearm muscle and tissue out, and then
Where he's got the bombs attached.
The bombs on his arms. Do you even remember that?
Okay. I do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he has literally like knife hands. It's so goofy. He has like
he cuts
knives
his
duct
arm
taped to-
off?
Yeah, he's like cutting.
That one
well,
was
it's not his
fucking
arm. He just
brutal.
He just cuts the forearm meat off.
Dude, the skin. Oh my god, it's like ruined and it's like so fleshy. It's so graphic. Like I could throw up. It was disgusting.
He was just making a filet-o forearm. That's all it was. He's
it was
cutting off a good slab.
terrible.
It was giving me like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 or 5, like when the boyfriend's got all the wires in his skin and stuff. It's giving me those vibes. I just thought I thought it was funny on the fact that the bombs on the arms. I was like, this is like a James Bond villain or something.
Yeah. It was just a little over the top when Jigsaw is literally using like improvised explosives. I was like, all right, this is something. And they even have like the timers and the beeping red lights and all this shit. And I was just like, oh my God. All right. The next one was the one that I was talking about, which is Valentina. This, in my opinion, was the most hardcore one, where she has to take like a specialized saw and cut off her leg. But it's not only cutting off your leg, she has to vacuum out the bone marrow. And then you get this nice juicy clip of like the blood going through a strainer and then the bone marrow kind of like coagulating on it. That was the moment in the movie that I was like, ooh, this is tough. This is tough to watch.
That was
and
nasty.
I could just feel my whole audience like being uncomfortable. You know, just like, this is disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that one was pretty good.
And going through the whole leg. Ow.
I know. So the way to survive that is that just you like cut to the bone or something? Like, I just don't understand. Like, if you're going to cut off your leg with your femoral artery in there, like, you're fucked no matter what. You're just going to bleed to death in like a minute, right?
She had like fucking 3 minutes to do that or something.
Yeah, like you're dead no matter what.
That's why she had the belt or whatever to like the time, because I think that closes up the artery.
That belt ain't gonna do shit.
I mean,
I'm not a doctor.
You try. I mean, you're still gonna bleed to death. That's like one of the biggest arteries in the body.
And she still fucking died because she didn't have enough bone marrow. That's what like kills me.
Well, they gotta do that. Because there's those sickos in the audience. They're like, yeah, cut her head off. You know, we gotta see it.
They fucking decapitated her. That's so fucked in like
I
so
can't
many
say
ways.
anything because under my breath I'm like, fuck yeah, cut her head off now.
Well, I knew they were gonna do it, but I was like,
of course,
fuck, this is so bad.
Oh, I forgot about this, but I just remembered with her body. What do you guys think of them using her intestines as like a lasso?
The rope?
When they're all clothed, and I was like, oh, they're just gonna take like the clothes off her, I guess, and use it. But they just literally take out her intestines and they're all like fully clothed, wearing like multiple layers of clothing, just looking fly still. I'm like, what the hell is this?
She's like, I got a rope. And I was like,
I mean,
what?
I got why they did it. Like, I know they're trying to be like, listen, like, she's ruthless from the get-go. Like, she's just like automatically cutting this dead body open.
Gnarly.
I know, but you could have just like took off your jacket and like...
I gotta cut out some intestines.
Could have Indiana Jones whipped your jacket and it would have been the same result.
I was thinking the funny thing with the leg cutting, or the general conceit that you have to give up for all these movies, is that people would just pass out. Like, if you're cutting your own leg off, I would assume at some point you just pass out, like, from pain.
No, the belt around it cuts off the shock as well.
I cannot. Stop it.
The next one is Mateo, which this is the one that Jill was mentioning. This is the brain one, which...
This is the one I winced at.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This was the one I was cracking up at. I thought it was like so... I don't know what it was. I was watching it and it was just like the looks on his face was like freaking out as he was doing it. It reminded me of like someone getting like a good head massage or something, or like, I don't know. It was just weird.
That's wholesome.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of when he was getting it, because the looks on his face were just like euphoric almost. And the guy next to me was fucking cracking up laughing at it as well. We were just two sickos sitting in the theater dying laughing at this guy cutting out his brains.
So gross.
I just like, you know, after you've seen, you know, your cohort like die there after like cutting her leg off, like, did he think he was only gonna get away with like that tiny sliver of brain? Like, you definitely needed more than that.
It was so squidgy.
It was, yeah.
He was trying to rip it out and it was like so spongy.
It was like a well chewed up piece of gum and he's just trying to get it. But yeah, I agree with Rowan. It was kind of like, I understand you probably don't want to cut off more of your brain, but it was also like he only put on a little tiny piece, and you should have known after you saw Valentina cut off her whole leg, there's going to be a lot to it.
I'm also just not convinced you can pull out your parts of your brain and live.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Well, does he just pull at it with like tweezers, or does he like actually?
It's just
yeah.
like
I was gonna
tweezers.
say he only like picks at it, right? Yeah, I don't believe you can rip that out either with just picking at it. He should have used the saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Next one was Gabriella. This was a pretty mid one that made not a whole lot of sense. This is where she's hanging up
this
in
was
the
the
air
worst
by
one.
her.
This
by
was the worst one.
Her leg and her hand, and I was literally like, so if you break your hand, you just survive, right? Like you would fall like 10 feet, but you'd be fine, right? Like,
well, my question is, but what happens if you break it the wrong way and you don't get loose? Like, what if
you
it
just
breaks?
burn to death?
Yeah, this one, I covered my eyes. I was like looking through my
really?
eyes. I've talked about this many times as someone that severely broke their entire ankle, and their ankle did like a 360. Like any broken bones in anything, I'm just like sick to my stomach. So this one hit me hard.
Interesting.
This reminded me of like the moment in, I don't know, Scary Movie 4 where like, I don't know, Shaq or Dr. Phil cuts off the wrong foot, whatever it was. Because I was literally like, you have a 50-50 shot of getting this right. And if you break the right one, you fall just like 10 feet. Granted, you fall upside down or whatever, but you're not burning to death or anything. Like, you're completely fine. And it's only your hand as well, which obviously most people have like more mobility and whatnot with your hand. It's just literally like break your thumb and then you can just get out. So that's why I was just like, this feels so strange that she's like, I'm going to break my foot and then just weirdly dangle here and then try and break my hand.
Well, that's what the other chick told her to do.
Yeah, I know, but just use your brain.
Apparently.
Now, I wonder, though, like, do you think that maybe that one was, like, a little easier? Maybe John did feel, like, a little bad for it, even though he said he didn't? Like, he didn't make it as harsh as all the other people. Because, like you said, like, realistically, if she had just done the stuff right away, like, she would have broke her hand, her foot, and that was it. Where, like, everyone else was, like, losing a limb or, like, a bunch of flesh or something.
It was tamer, I think. But I like how each one of us, there's something for everyone. There's one thing that really grosses each one of us out. So, that's funny.
Yeah, and then, I mean, the last couple was just, like, blood waterboarding with John and Carlos, which was just...
That was pathetic. I didn't like
it. It was just whatever.
It was a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like this young boy and old man helping each other out living. It was just, I don't know. It was just a strange dynamic. And then I was also wondering, like, so this was originally constructed for Cecilia and Parker, clearly. But also, they also had the backup office trap for Cecilia and Parker as well.
This is where you gotta like suspend disbelief.
Yeah, this is just like, so you set up 2 traps for them, but why not 3? Like, what if they figured out the office trap as well or something, right? It was just a little bit too silly. Like, in the moment, obviously, I was kind of like, well, they're not gonna kill John, but I don't know, maybe they'll drown the kid. I don't know, who knows? And it's also like that the payoff of push or pull, whatever it winds up being.
Oh yeah,
which is just like this. Once again, it's one of these silly little moments in this movie where John Kramer fixes a kid's bicycle wheel, where he's just like, I didn't have that on my bingo card when I was coming into Saw 10. It's just like this goofy little moment.
Well, and this is like kind of a reuse, like not with the blood, but like the push and pull they used in like, what was it, like 6 with the saw when they're like sawing the girlfriend in half or whatever in the storefront, and it's a push and pull lever.
Oh, okay.
Like they used this before. This was existing. It was with a saw, not blood.
Yeah, not with an old man and a little boy though. I mean, they're breaking new ground in Saw 10. The last one is just bad. Like that one I like didn't even care for at all. Like The Office, like filling up with poisonous gas and having to stick your head in a little hole. Just like
that was pretty dumb. Actually.
That was dumb. And then I'm also like, technically, he said, like once again, it's one of those Saw traps where it's like, technically she lives, but you're just stuck with your head out of the hole. You're like one of those bad Pornhub videos, my body's stuck in the dryer or something. She's just stuck there.
Jeez.
Forever.
Trying to check out your search history here.
Everyone knows those videos where it's like I bent over to get my laundry and got stuck. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't get that one because, like, is it Parker's the guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, like, the gas was, like, burning his skin.
Yeah, I know. So once again, she'd be burned.
Yeah, but she, like, didn't burn at all.
That's because she still needs to look cute.
Oh, okay, yeah. And also, wouldn't the gas just be burning her body that's not outside? Yeah.
Yeah, which once again, it just betrays, like, the Saw ideology, right? Which I think the movies do comment on eventually when they go on. I feel like Amanda winds up being more ruthless and just killing people.
Yeah.
Either that or whoever the other guy is. I can't remember. There's so many twists and turns. I can't remember who all the jigsaws are. But that winds up being commented on at some point. But once again, this would be early enough that, like, they should still be playing by the rules, technically, if you're going by the timeline, that this would be right after Saw 1 or whatever, right?
And you've already made an error, because that's not the last trap. You have the mid-credit trap also.
Okay, well, that's basically the first one of Saw 11, pretty much. But sure, we can talk about that if you guess. I guess, like, I don't know.
Well, I was going to say this is yet again another trap that's obviously, like, there's no escape to it. they're like watching him just, be shredded.
Well, we don't get all the, we don't know all the details, right? Like, is there something inside of him that he has to cut through, like, his old stitches or his old scar to get to? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, John just kind of turns it on and is like, you're going to get your scars back. And then they're just watching it. So that's where I kind of assumed. I was like, oh, okay, John's like, this guy's dying.
I don't know if John ever goes there in the original movies, though. I don't remember. Like, I don't think he explicitly makes a choice to just, like, make the games unwillable. I think he always plays by the rules, if I'm not mistaken. But, I mean, it's been so long since I've seen, like, I don't know, 4 and 5 or whatever that I can't remember for sure.
I can't remember what that other guy's name is. Because then
Hoffman.
Is it Odd?
Yeah, and my audience went like, they didn't! Like, and, like, someone, like, screamed, like, they did it! And then there was, like, a bunch of girls that were like, oh my god! And I was just like, oh my god, this is like crazy. It's like a MCU mid-credit scene.
Wow.
So are they gonna, do you think, like, another 5 of these and then we can switch to Carlos is gonna grow up and be the next Jigsaw?
Yeah, probably. I can see that. Why not? Go Saw 20 and he'll be in there.
I actually thought it was kind of interesting. I was like, that might actually kind of be smart. Like, like kind of get the like Latino audience in on it. Like, The Purge did this, right? Like the Forever Purge, This is like what they did. They were like, let's, switch the demographic in this movie. And I was like, that could be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I feel like Saw has enough appeal as well that they could do that if they wanted to. Just completely change the audience or who they're targeting as well. I mean, I feel like they kind of did that with
Spiral.
With Spiral, yeah, as well.
Didn't work out, but...
No, but I don't think didn't work out for that reason. I think the movie just wound up being kind of bad overall. Yeah. Where, this one kind of demonstrated that they could have a little bit more substance and kind of slow things down and actually have something to say and still actually make a good movie and a good Saw movie, pretty much. So, that was pretty surprising there. But yeah, anything else we want to say before we get into rating this?
I mean, I'm good.
Nope.
So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Jill, what would you give Socks?
I would give Socks a yay because it is a competent Saw movie. And like I said earlier, I think it is one of the better Saw movies, up there with like 1 and 2 for me. I think the gore was great. I think the subplots were cool. Had some like mystery in there. Things just keep being unveiled, but I had a couple gripes with it as well, like Amanda's acting, and they could have done something with her hair and makeup that was better than because in Saw 2 she has like the early 2000s Karen haircut, and in the first movie she has the long hair, and in this one she has like Star Trek Bob. But anyways, that was one of my gripes with it. And then also, I didn't like the kind of flashback sequence they had when they're trying to show that Amanda was doing these things all along, like setting up these traps. It was like, yeah, we know that already. Like, it's pretty obvious.
Flashback
show, don't
sequence
tell.
From 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So, yeah, but apart from that, I think it was a fun movie to go see, especially in the theater. So, yeah, I recommend watching it. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, I think for me as well, I'm going to give it a yay. I think overall it was a pretty smart choice to slow things down, develop John, and make him the main character of this iteration. I feel like fans have been wanting that for a long time. But most of the times when you kind of shift the focus to be like, oh, this is now the villain's movie, you get like Venom or something like that, which is just like, it's very easy for it to go wrong because a lot of times those villains or anti-heroes, they don't have enough substance to kind of, carry a movie. Weirdly enough, John does have enough substance to carry a movie, and I thought like his hope and the desperation that he had was a nice duality for for the film. And there was also the sick part of me that really enjoyed the traps for the most part, even the ones that I'm saying are pretty mid or pretty lame. It's still like I enjoyed watching what happened or how they were going to get out of it. And, there is a little bit of a sick satisfaction that I think if you're going to the Saw movies, you have to admit to a little degree that you're a sicko or, you're there to see the ingenuity and the creativity of the traps. And I thought even though they didn't all hit for me, I still really enjoyed it. And I was surprised that the leg one got me a little bit. I think it's probably the best iteration since Saw 2. I think realistically, if I actually sat down and watched Saw 2 without the bias and like obviously my nostalgia, it probably would be actually technically a better movie than Saw 2. But for now, I'll still say it's like in third place. And out of 10 movies, I mean, that's pretty good. It's very surprising that the 10th iteration in a franchise is actually good, you know? Once again, Fast X, garbage. So, you know, I enjoyed it, and I think this is probably the best one I've seen since, you know, I was watching Saw on DVD when I was like 13 and 14 or however old I was. So, yeah, it's a yay from me. What about you, Rowan?
Yeah, so I'm also going to give it a yay. I had a good time, and we're pretty much on the same level, Colton. Like, I think this is probably the third best one they've done. You know, I talked about before when we reviewed the first Saw, like the second one, I've always held a little higher than the first one, but this is definitely, you know, I think the third best. I'm a pretty big Tobin Bell fan. Like, I've seen him he's been in a lot of other stuff. He's on a lot of stuff on Shudder, guys. So if you're not on Shudder, get that. But he had a great Creep Show episode also. But he's just like a great character actor in general that kind of has been, you know, put in this role and never really can escape it now. So I did like that this gave him like something to do other than, you know, say I want to play a game, to let him explore this character. And it was interesting, even though, like you said, Colton, it kind of slowed, you know, Saw down. I liked it because I prefer a story rather than just a highlight clip of traps. So the traps mean more when I'm more invested in the story, and I think that's why we're seeing like critics and audience just really enjoy this one. So, yeah, I'm going to also give this a yay.
And if you're not following us on our socials already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, /, Letterboxd, Threads, Blue Sky. I don't even use half of those myself, but we're there at It Slays Podcast. And be sure to tell me that I'm not weird for casting my friends in like different roles of horror movies and then, you know, watching to see which one of us survives the longest, please. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Stephen, Joy, and Carvey, gain access to the Patreon-exclusive show Stream Screams, hosted by Gill, and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early. Be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Now, Rowan, go ahead and plug the playlist.
So it's that time. It's spooky season. So go to Spotify and go to the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned and go to the Linktree link in the bio. Click on there. Take you right to it. We upload licensed music or scores from iconic horror movies or horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. And you know what? I realize I don't even have the Saw theme song on here.
Oh, that's sacrilegious.
Great oversight that I will have to fix tonight, and I will make sure it's up there for everybody. But yeah, go take a listen and get your spooky music on.
And next time on the show, we're going to be covering The Exorcist Believer, which I will spoil right now and say that I am not looking forward to after I saw what David Gordon Green did to the last two Halloween movies. But
I'm excited.
I do already have my tickets for IMAX, so we'll see how that goes. And Gill, thanks for joining us on this episode of Now Slaying. Are you looking forward to The Exorcist Believer? Are you going to go check that out next weekend?
Yeah, I think I will. So looking forward to that. Maybe I'll be back here with you guys for that one.
And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And
it's
as
Jill.
long as you...
Sorry, you forgot me, bitch.
And that is Jill. And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.